Hi, my name's Rob Hunter, and I'm going to be talking about my teaching philosophy and pedagogical position. I suppose the key in my teaching is I'm going to be, I think, a very relationship based teacher. I think it's vitally important that you build good relationships with not only students but also parents and teachers as you go along. I think it's crucial to find out as much as you can about what makes each student tick. And I think it's important for so many reasons. Namely, if you're having any behavioural issues with them, it's so much easier to deal with them. If you have some background for why the student might be behaving that way. I remember it was in, I think, my second placement where I had a student who I hadn't met. He hadn't been there for the first week of classes, and I was teaching a class. I think it was a maths class, and he was just shockingly disruptive. So much so that I could barely get anything done, and I didn't realise until talking to the teacher after that how tough his last few weeks and months had been. His dad had just been uh, moved out of the family home. He'd been beating up the student and his mum. So speaking to the mentor teacher, she told me, look, this kid needs the carrot, not the stick. He needs to be praised wherever possible. If he's being disruptive, sometimes as simple as just, can you move? Can you come sit next to me? Rather than sort of singling him out to the children, criticising him for his bad behaviour, which just makes things worse. So I think early on, especially in the first week or two, it's really important to build that rapport with the kids, and yeah, just find out what makes them tick, even if it's things just what are they interested in, what footy teams do they go for, do they like singing, dancing, whatever. Just a little bit about each kid and learn how they like to learn themselves. Another thing is getting to know parents as well as possible. I think that was something I learned really well in my third placement, where one of the teachers was almost, I thought, unbelievably welcoming of parents. He gave out his mobile number and encouraged parents to get in touch about whatever they needed, and he sort of made himself available, not on weekends, but 5 days a week at any time, and he would get back to them with any queries they had, whether it was emails or texts. Let's face it, parents just love to be involved. And what my mentor teacher told me was that it makes parents so much more willing to help out in literacy classes, whether it's reading with kids or helping with spelling. And when it came to parent-teacher interviews, because they'd had so much to do with each other beforehand, there wasn't that sort of awkward or occasionally slightly hostile reaction from parents if their kids aren't going so well. They already knew why. Another important relationship is that of with your fellow teachers, not only personally but professionally too. And I think especially next year or the year after, or whenever we start teaching, it's going to be really important to have strong professional relationships with other people, with other teachers from the school, so they can help guide you in areas where you're obviously not going to be as experienced as they are, whether that's implementing different behavioural management techniques, or if you're working with maybe a child with a disability who you haven't had experience from before. If you've got good relationships with other teachers, then they're going to be much more willing to help you if need be. Tamara Bibi is a theorist whose thoughts and beliefs really resonate with me, especially in terms of building relationships with kids. And she talks about how important it is not only to build relationships with the children on a personal level, but to also, use formative assessment to find out how they learn. And I think as my placements have gone on, I've realised the importance of formative assessment more and more in helping you realise what makes each kid tick, but also on how they learn. Whether they're visual learners, whether they're kinesthetic learners, what bits of certain topics they're getting and what they're not getting. And I just think the more you know them, the children, the more you're going to be able to help. I'm also a big proponent of constructivist learning, and especially as the students get older and move through primary school. And it's been terrific in our science classes this semester to work. I'm working with grades 3s and 4s, and to really give them ownership of what's going on in the lessons. Early on, we discussed with them things that they were interested in science. A lot of that was to do with experiments. So we've done a lot of experiments, and they've been really hands-on in preparing the experiments and what we'll be doing. And then actually during the lessons, conducting the experiments, they've been very hands-on, and they've learned so much from that. Whether it's even if they've made mistakes, they've learned why the mistakes have been made and what they should do next time. So I'm a big proponent of constructivist learning, and especially Piaget's sort of traditional viewpoints on it. And although I can say the criticisms, and that there are reasons why people think that positivist learning is still crucial, especially in younger kids, I think wherever possible, constructivism can be so beneficial for students, and I've seen it firsthand. One of the ATL standards that I'm going to be discussing is 1.5, and it's differentiate teaching to meet the specific learning needs of students across the full range of abilities. And this really ties in well with what I was talking about with relationship-based teaching, in that I knew in one of the classes that I was teaching in my most recent placement, I was introducing the concept of division to grade 1 kids, which I knew would be a bit of a challenge for me and for them, just in terms of wording it correctly. So I had sort of 3 different, I had to try a couple of different ways of explaining it. I had divided by, split evenly, and finally groups of, and I modelled it on the whiteboard, the old sort of pizza pieces, splitting them evenly, which some understood. Some worked better with using dice in their hands, physically dividing. So if it's 8 divided by 2, saying how many groups of 2 in 8, so they're obviously 4. So it's just things like that, and that helped that I had a relationship with them and knew the way that most of the learners, the way that they learned. It gave me a big advantage in preparing my lessons to suit the different types of learners. Another ATL standard that I'll be looking at is 3.5, and that's using effective classroom communication. And this is something that I've certainly improved upon, especially in this most recent placement. I think early days, whereas I was probably a little bit keen to establish authority with the students, and sort of, anything that they were doing that was disruptive, I'd almost stop what I was saying to be firm with them, to ask them to be quiet. But it can really disrupt the flow of your lessons. So I've certainly improved in techniques of being able to prevent disruptive behaviour without disrupting the flow of the class and affecting what the rest of the class are doing. So that can be a look, it can be just saying their name, usually they know exactly what they're doing wrong, or it can be beckoning them over to sit next to you. There are a number of different ways that you can stop disruptive behaviour without it disrupting your own lesson. My third and final ATL standard, which ties in really well with my relationship-based teaching, is that of 7.3, engaging with parents and carers. This was especially prevalent in my last placement, where I had the opportunity to sit in on a couple of parent-teacher interviews, which was terrific for me to see the sort of the rapport between teacher and parents, how some parents were sort of would defer to the teacher in a lot of ways, and some who were not hostile, but would certainly challenge the teacher strongly about things that they might have thought the teacher wasn't doing well enough, or that their child wasn't being challenged, a number of different ways. And another one was another interesting discussion I had with a parent, at which my mentor teacher, it was nice, he wanted me to sit in on or listen to most of the conversations that he had with parents to help me learn the sort of everyday discussions that they have. Was about a kid who recently in year one been diagnosed with ADD. He was very embarrassed about having to take tablets, and he didn't want anyone else in the class to know about it. That was really positive for me to be involved in that, and to sort of hear from the parents' point of view why that was the case. And obviously we were more than happy to respect the students' wishes. That's my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.